Imagine waking up one day and realizing you can see what others can't. You notice how people chase shadows, how fear hides behind their smiles, how the world they believe in is made of fragile illusions. Suddenly, everything becomes transparent. The system, the stories, the masks, all revealed. But with that clarity comes a heavy price. Because to see what others don't isn't always a gift. Sometimes it's a burden. This is the danger of seeing, as Alan Watts once described, the peril of awakening in a world that still dreams.
Most people live their entire lives without ever questioning the stage on which their story unfolds. They wake up each morning and step into the same dream, a world that feels solid, meaningful, and familiar. Yet if you look closely, if you dare to peel back the thin skin of ordinary perception, you begin to sense something unsettling. The world you take as real is not as it seems. What we call reality is a kind of shared hallucination, an elegant agreement of minds. Alan Watts often said that we confuse the map with the territory. We mistake our thoughts about the world for the world itself. The words, the symbols, the names, they're useful, but they are not truth. A dollar is not wealth. A prayer is not divinity. The name of the tree is not the tree. Yet human beings live as though these shadows were substance. From the moment we are born, we are taught to divide, to label, to arrange existence into neat categories. We say, this is me, and that is the world. We draw invisible lines around things, calling one part good and another evil, one beautiful and another ugly. And by doing so, we forget that all opposites are two sides of the same coin. The self and the universe are not separate. They are two ways of looking at one flow of energy. But we rarely see that because the illusion is comfortable. The illusion gives us identity, direction, purpose. It makes us feel safe inside our stories. Think about how we speak of time, past, present, future. Yet in direct experience, there is only the eternal now. The rest is memory and imagination. We speak of I as if it were something solid, yet the I is only a bundle of thoughts, sensations, and memories held together by habit. We talk of life and death as though they were enemies. Yet, what if they are the inhale and exhale of the same breath? Reality, as Watts described it, is not a collection of separate objects, but a living, pulsating dance of relationships. The flower does not exist without the bee, the mountain without the valley, the observer without the observed. To see one clearly, you must see both. But the human mind is trained to cut the world into fragments, to cling to one piece and reject the rest. We worship one half of the whole, then wonder why we feel incomplete. The illusion is not evil, it is necessary. It's the game of existence, the divine play, or Leela, as the ancient Hindus called it. The universe hides from itself in order to rediscover itself anew. It pretends to be you and me and every passing moment so that it can experience its own infinity from an infinite number of perspectives. Yet when you begin to see through this play, when the curtain flickers and you glimpse the machinery behind the stage, something in you changes forever. You start to realize that your desires, your fears, your ambitions are not entirely your own. They are part of a larger movement, a wave pattern in the ocean of being. You are not the wave alone, you are the ocean waving. But here lies the paradox. Once you see the illusion, you cannot unsee it. The game loses some of its seriousness. The values that once drove you, success, recognition, control, begin to dissolve. You laughed at things that once made you angry. You feel detached from the endless drama of me and mine. And yet, this detachment can be terrifying, because while the illusion gave you comfort, its absence leaves you suspended in mystery. The mind craves certainty, but reality offers only flow. The ego demands ground, but existence is groundless. So what happens when you stop believing the illusion? You begin to see that every identity, rich or poor, saint or sinner, hero or villain, is a mask worn by the same consciousness. Behind every conflict, every struggle, there is only the play of polarity, the universe dreaming of itself through billions of eyes. Alan Watts once said that enlightenment is not about becoming something more, but realizing what you already are. It is not an addition, but a subtraction, the falling away of what was never real to begin with. When you see that, the illusion doesn't vanish. It simply becomes transparent. You can still live, still love, still play, but you know, deep down, that it's all a dance. But most people fear this realization, because if life is a game, then what is the point of all our striving? Why build? Why fight? Why suffer? Watts would smile at such questions. The point of music, he would say, is not to reach the end of the song. The point of dancing is not to arrive at a destination. The beauty lies in the movement itself. So too with life. The illusion of reality is not a mistake to be fixed, but a melody to be played consciously. You don't have to escape it. You only have to awaken within it. To know that you are both the actor and the audience, both the dream and the dreamer. When you realize this, something miraculous happens. The ordinary world begins to shimmer again. The colors seem brighter. The sounds become richer. The small things, a drop of rain, a child's laughter, the wind through leaves, suddenly reveal their sacredness. Because now you see them not as objects separate from you, but as expressions of the same mystery that moves through you. The illusion remains, but it no longer deceives you. And in that moment of clear seeing, you understand that reality was never hiding anything from you. It was you who were hiding from it, behind words, beliefs, and fears. The truth was always too simple, too immediate to grasp. There is no you looking at the world. There is only the looking, the seeing itself. The river does not know where it flows, but it flows effortlessly. The bird does not plan its song, but it sings perfectly. Likewise, when you stop trying to control reality, when you let go of your constant effort to make sense of it, you begin to live in harmony with it. You dance with the illusion instead of fighting against it. You laugh with the play instead of fearing it. That is what it means to awaken, not to destroy the dream, but to dream consciously. For the illusion of reality is not a prison, it is a mirror. And when you finally look into that mirror and see yourself, not as a fragment, but as the whole, you realize that there was never anything to escape from. You were never trapped. You were only pretending to be. The illusion ends not when the world changes, but when your way of seeing does. Then, even the smallest thing, a leaf falling, a wave breaking, a heartbeat, becomes the entire universe, revealing itself in the simplest form. That is the beauty and the danger of seeing through the illusion of reality.
Every awakening carries a cost. When you begin to see through the surface of things, the world you once knew starts to dissolve. The familiar becomes strange. The ordinary becomes transparent. You can no longer move through life as if everything were solid, predictable, and certain. You've stepped behind the curtain, and there's no going back. At first, it feels liberating, a rush of clarity, a profound relief. You feel as if you've been freed from a long dream. But soon the exhilaration fades, and you begin to feel the weight of what you've seen. Because the truth, unlike illusion, offers no comfort. It has no edges to hold on to. It is vast, open, and indifferent to your desire for meaning. Alan Watts often said that enlightenment is a dangerous thing for those who are unprepared. The light that reveals also blinds. The same insight that liberates you from illusion can isolate you from those who still live within it. You begin to speak a language others do not understand, a language without certainty, without dogma, without the comforting walls of belief. And so, people look at you differently. Some admire your calmness but feel uneasy around it. Others interpret your detachment as arrogance. You try to explain, but words fail. For how can you describe to someone that the self they defend so fiercely is an illusion? How can you tell them that the things they cling to, success, faith, morality, even love, are temporary masks in an infinite play? You can't. So you stay quiet. You nod. You smile. You return to the dream for their sake, but a part of you no longer belongs there. This is the first price of insight: alienation. When you begin to see through the surface of things, you can't fully participate in it anymore. You can play, but you can't take it seriously. You can act, but you know it's a performance. And in a world that worships seriousness, success, goals, progress, your laughter sounds like rebellion. Many who glimpse this truth experience what mystics call the dark night of the soul. It's not depression in the ordinary sense. It's a deep existential solitude, the silence that follows the collapse of all false certainties. You no longer know who you are or what you should be doing. The roles that once defined you, parent, lover, friend, believer, achiever, feel like costumes you can no longer wear. You have stepped outside the play, but you haven't yet learned how to re-enter it with awareness. And so, for a while, life feels empty. The people around you still chase meaning in careers, possessions, relationships, but you've seen the fragility of it all. You can't unsee it. The promises of the world, happiness, permanence, control, ring hollow. It's as if the soundtrack of reality has stopped playing, and you're standing in silence, watching everyone dance to music that no longer exists for you. But here's the strange thing. That silence is not meaningless. It's simply vast. The ego interprets emptiness as loss, but in truth, it is space, the infinite background in which everything arises. Watts would say, when you find out who you really are, you realize that what you were seeking was never lost. But before that realization comes peace, it often comes as terror, because the ego is built to survive, and enlightenment threatens its existence. The more clearly you see that there is no permanent self, the more desperately the mind tries to reassert control. It invents new identities, even spiritual ones, the awakened one, the enlightened observer, to keep the illusion alive. Insight, then, is not a single revelation, but an ongoing surrender. You die again and again to everything you thought you were. You watch your opinions, attachments, and certainties crumble, and each time you try to rebuild, life reminds you that there is nothing to stand on. The ground keeps disappearing beneath your feet. The second price of insight is vulnerability. When the walls of belief collapse, you are left naked before existence. There's no longer a story to protect you, no ideology to hide behind. You're exposed to the full force of the unknown. It's terrifying and beautiful. Because in that raw openness, life touches you directly. You begin to feel things you never allowed yourself to feel before. The joy, the pain, the vastness of being, all unfiltered, all real. Most people spend their lives armoring themselves against reality. They hide behind labels, behind plans, behind distractions. But once you've seen through illusion, those defenses no longer work. You can't lie to yourself anymore. You can't pretend not to know. You're forced to feel everything: the suffering of others, the fragility of life, the impermanence of every moment. And that sensitivity can hurt. You may find yourself weeping for no reason, laughing at the absurdity of everything, feeling compassion even for those who harm you because you see that they too are lost in the dream. You begin to love without reason, but that love is not always returned. You offer understanding, but it is often met with confusion. That is the third price of insight: loneliness. Not the loneliness of being physically alone, but the deeper solitude of knowing that your way of seeing no longer fits the collective trance. You live among people, but you feel as though you inhabit a different dimension, one where meaning is fluid and truth has no fixed form. Yet this loneliness is also sacred, because it is in solitude that truth deepens. The silence that once frightened you begins to reveal its depth. You start to see that you were never truly separate from anyone, that even your isolation is part of the great unfolding. Slowly, the emptiness turns to spaciousness. The loneliness turns to stillness. The vulnerability turns to openness. You begin to see that the price you pay for insight is also the gateway to freedom. For what is freedom if not the ability to be at peace with not knowing? To live without guarantees, without masks, without the need to control. The awakened person is not someone who escapes the world, but one who sees it clearly and no longer clings. They can play the game, knowing it's a game. They can love deeply, knowing that all things pass. They can die knowing that death is not the end, but a transformation, another movement in the endless dance of being. Alan Watts once described this state as the art of living without anxiety over impermanence. To see change not as loss, but as a rhythm. To see death not as destruction, but as renewal. The insight that once isolated you now connects you. You realize that everyone, consciously or not, is moving toward the same awakening. Every joy, every heartbreak, every illusion is part of that process. The world is not asleep out of malice, but out of necessity. It is dreaming itself awake. And when you see that, your loneliness softens into compassion. You no longer judge those who don't see. You understand that blindness, too, is part of the play. You smile, not because everything is perfect, but because it no longer needs to be. The price of insight is steep, but it is the price of truth. To lose illusion is to lose certainty, identity, belonging, but it is also to gain vision, freedom, and love without condition. You pay with your comfort, but you are repaid with clarity. You give up your stories, but you receive the silence in which all stories arise. And in that silence, you finally understand. You are never seeking truth. Truth was always seeking you. The light that once blinded you now becomes your guide. The darkness that once terrified you becomes your teacher. You no longer stand apart from the world, you stand with it, fully awake, fully human, fully alive. This is the paradox Alan Watts pointed to again and again. To awaken is to lose everything that was not real and to discover that nothing real can ever be lost. That is the price of insight, and it is worth everything.
After the silence, after the solitude, after the disorienting freedom of seeing through illusion, something begins to shift. The chaos that once frightened you starts to take on a strange harmony. The contradictions that once tore you apart begin to dance together. You realize that the truth is not one thing or the other. It is both, always both. This is the beginning of wisdom, not the destruction of paradox, but its acceptance. Alan Watts often said that the universe is fundamentally playful and that seriousness is a disease of the mind. The more you struggle to make reality consistent, the more it slips through your fingers. Life refuses to fit into our categories. It is at once light and dark, sacred and ordinary, birth and death, joy and sorrow, inseparable opposites endlessly weaving into one another. The human mind wants to choose. It wants clarity, certainty, direction. It wants to declare, this is true, that is false. This is right, that is wrong. This is me, that is not. But existence laughs softly at such divisions. It knows that every truth contains its opposite, that every boundary eventually dissolves. The wave and the ocean are not enemies, they are one and the same motion. When you begin to live in awareness of this, something miraculous happens. Tension turns to rhythm. What once felt like conflict now feels like movement. You begin to sense that the very contradictions of life are what make it alive. Without loss, there is no value. Without chaos, no creation. Without death, no birth. The paradox is not a flaw in the system, it is the heartbeat of reality itself. Yet, most of us resist it. We want life to be simple, linear, manageable. We want to eliminate pain, defeat uncertainty, conquer fear. But to conquer these things would be to remove the very contrast that gives life its depth. It would be like trying to have music without silence, light without shadow, or love without vulnerability. Watts often reminded us that the dance of opposites is not meant to be resolved, it is meant to be enjoyed. The universe is not a problem to be solved, it is an experience to be lived. And when you finally stop trying to make sense of it all, you begin to sense it, to feel the pulse of reality beating through everything. Acceptance is not resignation. It is not saying, this is fine. It is saying, this is. It is the willingness to meet life as it comes, without turning away, without demanding that it be different. It is seeing the perfection hidden within imperfection, the order within chaos, the peace inside change. The paradox of awakening is that only when you stop trying to control life do you discover that you were never separate from it. You and the flow are the same thing. The current that carries you is not against you, it is you. Imagine the river resisting its own course. shouting at the rocks, demanding the water to move differently. That's what the human ego does. It argues with reality, forgetting that it is reality. The acceptance of paradox is the end of that argument. It is the moment when you finally stop fighting the river and allow yourself to float, not because you've given up, but because you've realized there was nowhere else to go. At first, this surrender feels like death. The mind, which thrives on control, interprets letting go as annihilation. But soon you realize that what dies is only the illusion of separateness. What remains is life itself, vast, luminous, ungraspable, yet profoundly intimate. This is the paradox of self and other. You are a single point of consciousness, unique and irreplaceable, yet you are also everything that ever was and ever will be. You are the wave rising from the sea, and when you fall, you return to what you always were, water. The wave's beauty lies precisely in its impermanence. It appears, dances for a moment, and disappears, but the ocean remains, endless and whole. When you truly see this, the fear of death begins to fade, because death too is part of the dance. You cannot hold on to the music, but you can dance while it plays. You cannot cling to the form, but you can love its passing. And that love, pure, unattached, radiant, becomes your way of being. The acceptance of paradox transforms the way you move through the world. You no longer divide experiences into good or bad. You see that pleasure and pain, success and failure, gain and loss are all instruments in the same symphony. Each note has meaning only in relation to the others. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin to ask, "What is this teaching me about being alive?" You stop chasing perfection and start noticing beauty. You stop running from silence and start hearing the music inside it. You stop demanding certainty and begin to trust the mystery. This is not passivity, it is participation. True acceptance does not withdraw from life, it embraces it more fully than ever before. It laughs, it cries, it dances, it breathes. It says yes to the entire experience, the joy and the suffering, the rise and the fall, because it knows they are inseparable opposites. Watts once compared life to music. He said, "The point of the dance is not to reach the end of the floor. The purpose is not to arrive, but to move, to feel, to be moved." In the same way, the acceptance of paradox frees you from the obsession with outcomes. You are no longer living for the next achievement, the next insight, the next goal. You are living this moment completely. And that moment, once you stop running from it, is infinite. Every breath, every sound, every heartbeat becomes a doorway into eternity. Because eternity is not endless time, it is timeless presence. It is the recognition that now is all there ever was, all there ever will be. When you accept paradox, you also accept that awakening and ignorance are not opposites. They are partners in the same dance. The awakened one still forgets, still stumbles, still feels pain. But now they see even those moments as sacred. They do not try to escape the dream. They play consciously within it. To live this way is to live lightly. You take yourself less seriously. You begin to laugh more, not the laughter of cynicism, but the laughter of understanding. The laughter that comes when you realize that everything you've been fighting was never outside you. You see God in the mess. You see wisdom in the mistake. You see love in the impermanent. And in that seeing, you become free. Because freedom is not the absence of limitation, it is the recognition that even limitation belongs to the whole. The bird is free not because it escapes the air, but because it knows how to move with it. The acceptance of paradox does not make you invulnerable. You will still feel fear, sadness, and loss, but you will no longer resist them. You will see them as waves passing through the same ocean of consciousness. You will allow them to rise and fall, knowing that nothing real can ever be lost. This is the final stage of seeing, not detachment, but intimacy, not withdrawal, but union. You realize that the divine was never somewhere else, it was always here, hidden in plain sight in every fleeting moment. The paradox remains, but you no longer need to solve it. You simply live it. And that, perhaps, is the deepest secret of all. When you stop trying to make sense of life, life begins to make sense of you. When you stop seeking perfection, the world reveals its beauty. When you stop striving to awaken, you realize you were never asleep. Everything is one, and yet, wonderfully, everything is two. That is the acceptance of paradox, the ability to say yes to both sides of existence, to laugh and to cry, to live and to die, to know and to not know, and to find peace in between. In the end, you do not transcend the world, you return to it fully, tenderly, joyfully. You chop wood, carry water, love, lose, and laugh again. You live the same life as before, but now you know it's all sacred. And that knowing, that effortless participation in the mystery of being, that is what Alan Watts called awakening. Not escape,